I laughed the loudest at the company happy hour only to realize I was the joke. Not because of what my boss said, not because of the cheap tequila shots, but because my best friend, my closest colleague, had just looked me in the eyes with a softness that could break me, and whispered words that twisted my world apart. "I'm in love with you." The sound of glasses clinking and music thrumming from the corner faded into a muffled haze. My breath hitched, caught between disbelief and the weight of something I had never dared imagine. She said it so quietly, so vulnerably, that I almost pretended I hadn't heard it. Almost. Her name is Emily Carter. She's the kind of woman you don't just notice, you remember. Tall, with sunlit blonde waves that always seemed to slip out of her messy bun during meetings, and eyes the color of stormy skies before the rain. Emily was my anchor in the chaos of our corporate grind at a New York marketing firm. We had shared coffee at 7 a.m., countless eye rolls during client calls, and conspiratorial laughter that stitched our souls together. But love? Her love? For me? I wasn't prepared. The Uber ride home that night was a blur. My mind replayed her words like a broken record. The way she said it, not like a confession, but like a truth she had carried too long. She didn't wait for my answer. She didn't press. She just smiled faintly, eyes glistening, and changed the subject back to some harmless office gossip. And me? I laughed too loudly. I pretended too hard. I turned my head to the window, ashamed of how cowardly my silence sounded. The next morning everything looked the same, yet nothing was. Emily sat at her desk, 3 feet away from mine, sipping her black coffee as if she hadn't just upended my world the night before. She typed an email, her brows furrowed in that way I'd memorized, her lips pressed together in concentration. And I stared at her hands, those hands that had fixed my tie before presentations, brushed against mine when we reached for the same stapler, carried my weight when I'd nearly collapsed after a disastrous pitch. I wanted to speak, to say something, anything, but fear is a cruel thing. It convinces you that silence is safer than truth. "Morning," she said softly, glancing up with that lopsided smile of hers. "Morning," I croaked, my voice embarrassingly uneven. Her smile faltered just a fraction. But she didn't push. Emily never pushed. Weeks slipped by like pages of a book I was too scared to read. Work deadlines, late-night coffee runs, our usual banter, they all continued, but something had changed. Beneath every laugh was tension. Beneath every glance was an unspoken question. And every night, lying awake in my tiny Brooklyn apartment, I asked myself the same thing. Why didn't I just say yes? The truth was, I was terrified. Terrified of what it meant. Terrified of losing her. Terrified of admitting something I had buried deep inside myself for years. Because Emily wasn't the first girl I had felt something for. She was just the first one brave enough to say it out loud. The turning point came on a rainy Thursday evening. We had stayed late at the office, the city outside drowning in a storm. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the only sound besides our keyboards tapping. When the power flickered out, New York's electrical grid, ever unreliable, were plunged into semi-darkness, only the glow of the streetlights seeping in. Emily laughed nervously. "Well, that's one way to end a day." I turned, and there she was, sitting across from me, her face half-lit, half-shadowed. She looked unreal, like something out of a painting. And before I could stop myself, I blurted, "Why me, Emily?" Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" "You said you're in love with me," I whispered, the words almost painful to say aloud. "Why me? Out of everyone." For the first time in weeks, she looked at me without her protective smile. Her eyes softened, raw and unguarded. "Because you see me," she said simply. "Not the polished, put-together version I show everyone else. You see the mess, the fear, the stubborn parts one hate about myself. And you never turn away." I swallowed hard, heart pounding. "And because," she added, her voice breaking just slightly, "when you laugh, it feels like home." The silence stretched, thick with everything unsaid. My throat burned with words I wanted to give her, but fear kept chaining me down. So instead I whispered, "I can't." Emily's eyes flickered pain, resignation, and then the careful mask slipping back on. She nodded once, as if she'd expected it all along. "Okay," she said softly. And that was it. She gathered her things, gave me a faint smile, and walked out into the storm. I sat there long after she left, listening to the rain hammer against the windows, realizing I had just broken something far more precious than I understood. The weeks after were unbearable. Emily still came to work, still cracked jokes, still sipped her coffee, but the warmth was gone. Her laughter didn't reach me anymore. Our conversations became transactional, polite, like we were strangers trapped in a script. And God, it hurt. It hurt more than I expected. More than I could stand. Because every day without her closeness felt like a punishment. Every empty glance, every polite smile, reminders of the love I had pushed away. And the cruelest part? I wanted her. I wanted her more than anything. But by the time I realized it, I feared it was too late. One evening at another office happy hour, I watched her from across the bar. She was laughing with someone else, a woman I didn't know, dark-haired, striking. They leaned close, too close, and something inside me snapped. Jealousy is an ugly beast, but it was also my revelation. Because in that moment, seeing her smile at someone else, I knew with a painful, blinding clarity, I was in love with Emily Carter. Not just a little. Not just in passing. Deeply. Irrevocably. And if I didn't fight for her now, I'd lose her forever. That night, lying awake again, I finally asked myself the question I'd been too cowardly to face. What are you so afraid of? And the answer came sharp and undeniable. Not her. Not love. But myself. I had spent years hiding behind masks, convincing myself I was safe in the shadows. But Emily had seen through all of it. And maybe that terrified me. But maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what I needed. The next day I decided I was going to fight for her, even if I had to risk everything. The morning after my decision, my heart raced the moment I walked into the office. It felt like every step toward my desk was heavier than the last, as though gravity itself wanted to hold me back. But determination, once born, is impossible to silence. Emily was already there, as she always was, sipping her coffee and scrolling through her emails. She looked calm, radiant, even like nothing had ever broken between us. And yet, when her eyes flickered up to meet mine, the distance in them was unbearable. I had to say something, but the words got stuck in my throat again, just like every other time. I swallowed, forced a smile, and muttered, "Morning. Morning," she said softly, her voice polite but detached. Killed me. For the rest of the day, I barely managed to focus on my tasks. Every time I glanced at her, I remembered the stormy night she confessed. The way her voice trembled. The way I shut her down. And now, the way she avoided me as if protecting herself from further wounds. When lunchtime rolled around, I found myself walking toward the break room just as she was leaving it, carrying a salad in one hand and her phone in the other. She almost brushed past me without looking. "Emily," I blurted. She froze, glancing up briefly. "Yeah." My mouth went dry. All the words I had rehearsed in the shower, in my head during the subway ride, vanished into thin air. "You never mind," I stammered, stepping aside awkwardly. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She nodded, whispered, "Okay," and walked away. It felt like the sharpest rejection in the world, even though I was the one rejecting myself. That evening, I didn't go straight home. Instead, I wandered through the streets of Manhattan, the city buzzing with energy I couldn't absorb. Neon lights blurred in the drizzle, the air thick with the scent of food carts and exhaust. I stopped at a small park bench near Bryant Park, pulling out my phone, scrolling through my camera roll. Picture after picture of Emily and me stared back. Our lunches, our late-night work sessions, even a candid she'd taken of me laughing so hard I nearly cried. She always teased me about how unflattering it was. But looking at it now, all I saw was the way she looked at me when she took it like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. Tears burned behind my eyes. I was such a coward. The next week, things shifted again. Emily started spending more time with the dark-haired woman I had seen at the bar. Her name, I learned through overheard conversations, was Rachel. They worked out together, grabbed dinner, sometimes even came into the office side by side. Every time I saw them laugh together, every time Rachel touched her arm casually, it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Jealousy is cruel, but it was also clarifying. I couldn't sit by and watch someone else take her away. Not when I knew Emily still carried the wound I had given her. I had to act. The opportunity came sooner than expected. On a Friday afternoon just before the weekend, our manager assigned Emily and me to prepare a major presentation for a potential client. The deadline was brutal Monday morning. That meant late nights, just the two of us like old times. When Emily glanced at me after the announcement, her expression was unreadable, professional, controlled. "Guess we'll be seeing a lot of each other this weekend," she said casually. My heart ached at her tone. Once, those words would have been playful, tinged with excitement. Now they were flat. But I nodded. "Yeah, we'll kill it." She smiled faintly but didn't meet my eyes. Saturday evening, we camped out in the office. Papers scattered across the conference table, coffee cups multiplying like weeds. Emily sat across from me, typing furiously, her focus razor sharp. The tension between us was suffocating. Every so often, our hands would brush when we reached for the same document, and she would pull away immediately as if burned. Finally, around midnight, she leaned back with a sigh. "We're making good progress. Maybe we should call it a night soon." I looked at her, heart pounding. This was my chance. "Emily," I said softly. She glanced up, her eyes tired but curious. "Yeah." I opened my mouth, but fear clawed at me again. What if she rejected me now? What if I had waited too long? But then I remembered Rachel. And the thought of losing her forever shoved courage into me. "I need to tell you something," I whispered. Emily straightened, her expression guarded. "Okay." I swallowed hard. That night, when you told me how you felt, that I was scared. I didn't know how to respond. I thought I was protecting both of us by staying quiet. But I was wrong. I've been wrong this whole time. Her brows furrowed, but she said nothing. "I can't stop thinking about you," I continued, my voice trembling. I tried to push it down, tried to ignore it, but it's there. It's always been there. "Emily, I'm in love with you too." The words hung in the air, raw and trembling like exposed nerves. Emily's lips parted, her eyes wide. For a long moment she just stared at me, as if trying to decide whether to believe me. Then she laughed. Not cruelly, but with a sadness that broke me. "You can't just say that now," she whispered. "Not after weeks of silence. Not after telling me you couldn't." "I know," I said quickly, leaning forward. "I know I hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. But Emily, I can't keep pretending. I don't want anyone else. I just want you." Her eyes glistened, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table. "Do you even understand what it felt like for me? To lay everything out, to risk everything, and to have you shut me down like that?" "Yes," I whispered. "I understand now, and I hate myself for it. But please don't tell me it's too late." The silence between us stretched unbearably. My chest ached with the weight of her indecision. Finally, Emily closed her eyes, took a shaky breath, and whispered, "I don't know if I can trust you with my heart again." The words were soft, but they shattered me all the same. That night I went home broken. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of our conversation. My confession, her hesitation, the pain in her eyes. I wanted to believe that somewhere beneath her walls, she still loved me. But had I destroyed my chance beyond repair? For the first time, I realized that love wasn't just about wanting someone, it was about proving you deserved them. And I hadn't done that yet. So I made a promise to myself. I would show her. Not with empty words, but with actions. With consistency. With the kind of courage I should have had from the beginning. Because Emily Carter was worth it. Sunday became the longest day of my life. We met again at the office, working side by side in silence. She didn't bring up our conversation and I didn't push. But every glance I stole at her reminded me of what was at stake. When we finally wrapped up the project late that night, Emily stood, gathering her things. "See you tomorrow," she said softly. And as she walked out, I whispered to myself, "Not if I see you first." Because tomorrow wasn't just Monday. It was the day I would fight for her. Monday morning, the client presentation was flawless. We nailed every point, fielded every question with ease, and walked out of that boardroom with a signed contract that meant everything to the company. Our manager congratulated us, colleagues cheered, and for a moment, the old spark between us flickered again. Emily's smile, genuine and bright, warmed me like sunlight. But then Rachel appeared in the hallway, waving Emily over. My heart clenched as Emily walked toward her, their shoulders brushing, laughter spilling between them. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to act. That evening I stood outside Emily's apartment building in Brooklyn, rain pouring down, soaking me to the bone. My hands trembled around the bouquet of lilies I had bought. The flower she once told me reminded her of her grandmother's garden. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, dripping wet, clutching flowers like some cliché rom-com idiot, her eyes widened. "What are you doing here?" she asked, half surprised, half exasperated. I swallowed hard. "I couldn't wait. I had to see you," she sighed, stepping aside reluctantly. "You're going to ruin my floor. Come in." Inside, I set the flowers on her kitchen counter, trying to steady my breath. Emily crossed her arms, leaning against the wall, watching me with guarded eyes. "Why are you really here?" she asked. "Because I can't lose you," I whispered. Her brows furrowed. "You keep saying that. But what are you willing to do about it?" I stepped closer, heart racing. "Anything. Everything. I'll wait as long as it takes. I'll prove to you that I mean it. Emily, I don't want anyone else. I want you. I always have, even when I was too afraid to admit it." Her eyes softened, but her voice was cautious. "And what happens when you're afraid again? What happens when it gets hard?" "Then I'll stay," I said firmly. "Even if it scares me. Especially then. Because loving you is the bravest thing I've ever done." Tears welled in her eyes, and for the first time in weeks, she let her guard slip. "You're such an idiot," she whispered, a tear rolling down her cheek. I smiled through my own tears. "I know, but I'm your idiot. If you'll let me be." She stared at me for a long, agonizing moment. Then finally, she whispered the words I had been dying to hear. "Don't make me regret this." And before I could respond, she pulled me into her arms. Her embrace was warm, trembling, almost hesitant. My face pressed against the crook of her neck, inhaling the faint scent of lavender shampoo. For a second it felt like everything, the fear, the weeks of distance, the silent ache had melted away. But the truth was, this wasn't the end of our story. It was only the beginning of a more dangerous part. Learning how to trust each other again. Emily pulled back first, her eyes glistening but cautious. "I don't know what this means yet," she whispered. "It means I love you," I said firmly. "And I'm going to prove it." Her lips curved in a fragile smile. "Words are easy. Actions. That's what matters." "I'll show you," I promised. "As long as it takes." She didn't answer. Instead, she leaned her forehead against mine, closing her eyes. And for that night at least silence was enough. The days that followed were a strange mixture of bliss and fear. At the office, Emily still kept things professional. We didn't suddenly turn into a couple holding hands by the coffee machine or sneaking kisses by the printer. No, if anything, she became more guarded in public. But there were moments, fleeting and fragile, that told me we were finding our way back to each other. The brush of her fingers against mine when she handed me a file. The ghost of a smile when our eyes met across the conference table. The way she lingered after work just long enough for us to walk to the subway together. Small things, but they were ours. One night a week later we went out for dinner. Not a date, not officially. She called it celebrating the client win. But the way she chose a quiet little Italian restaurant tucked away in the West Village. The way she wore that soft blue dress that made her eyes look even stormier. It felt like more than just work. Over pasta and wine, the tension between us slowly melted. We laughed again, real, unrestrained laughter that I hadn't heard from her in months. For the first time I felt like maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the ruins of what I had broken. But then just as the check arrived, her phone buzzed. "Rachel." Emily's smile faltered. She glanced at the screen, then back at me. "It's nothing," she said quickly, shoving the phone aside. But the shadow in her eyes told me it wasn't nothing at all. Later that night, as we walked through the cool autumn air, I finally asked the question gnawing at me. "Are you still seeing her?" Emily stopped, her breath visible in the cold. "Rachel." I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. She hesitated. "Too long. It's complicated." The words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. "Complicated how?" I pressed. "She's a friend," Emily said finally. "Someone who was there for me when I felt like I had no one else." My stomach twisted. "More than a friend?" Her eyes flickered away. "Maybe. But it doesn't matter now." "It matters to me," I whispered, the jealousy sharp in my chest. Emily's gaze snapped back to mine, her eyes blazing. "And where were you when it mattered most?" When I poured my heart out and you shut me down. You don't get to demand answers from me now. Not when you left me standing in the rain that night. Her words hit like a slap. And the worst part? She was right. I'm not demanding, I said softly. I need to know where we stand. I don't want to lose you to her. Emily's shoulders sagged, her fire dimming into exhaustion. I don't know where we stand either. I'm trying to figure it out. The night ended there, the walk to her apartment quiet and heavy. She hugged me briefly before disappearing inside, leaving me on the sidewalk with more questions than answers. The following week was brutal. At work, we went through the motions, but the spark from our dinner was gone. Every time her phone buzzed, my chest tightened, wondering if it was Rachel again. Every time she smiled at a message, I wondered if it was about me or her. Jealousy isn't rational. It's poison. And slowly it began to seep into every part of me. One afternoon, unable to take it anymore, I confronted her in the break room. Are you still in love with her? I blurted. Emily froze, a mug halfway to her lips. What? Rachel, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Are you still in love with her? Her jaw tightened. That's none of your business. It is my business, I snapped. If we reef this ice, if you and I are trying again, I need to know. Her eyes narrowed. Trying again? You think one bouquet of flowers and a few sweet words undo weeks of silence? You think that makes us something again? I flinched. I thought that's what we were working toward. Emily set her mug down with a loud clink, her voice trembling with anger. You don't get to decide that. You don't get to walk back into my life and expect me to drop everything, to forget the hurt, to just choose you because you finally figured out what you want. Tears stung my eyes. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking for a chance. Emily shook her head, her eyes glistening. I don't know if I can give you that. And then she walked out, leaving me standing in the break room with nothing but the echo of her footsteps. That night I broke. I sat in my apartment, lights off, clutching my phone like it might anchor me. I typed out a dozen messages to her, pleas, apologies, confessions. Deleted them all. Typed again. Deleted again. Finally I wrote one line. I love you. And I'll wait no matter how long it takes. I hit send before I could change my mind. She didn't reply. The days blurred. Work piled up. Life went on, but inside I felt like I was drowning. Every moment without her felt heavier, lonelier. And yet I couldn't give up. Because underneath her anger, her walls, I knew she still loved me. I saw it in the way her hands trembled when we argued, in the way her voice broke when she pushed me away. Love doesn't vanish. It hides, it buries itself, but it doesn't vanish. The question was, would she ever let herself trust me again? A week later, the answer came in the most unexpected way. It was late at night, the office nearly empty. I was finishing up a report when I heard the sound of muffled crying from the stairwell. I followed it cautiously and found Emily sitting on the steps, her head in her hands, shoulders shaking. Emily, I whispered. She looked up, startled, her eyes red and swollen. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same, I said softly, sitting down beside her. She tried to wipe her tears away, but more spilled down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean for you to see this. Don't apologize, I said gently. Talk to me. For a moment she resisted. But then the dam broke. It's Rachel, she confessed, her voice raw. She wants more. She's been asking me to choose. And I can't. I can't because it's not fair to her. But it's not fair to you either. I feel like I'm being torn in half. My chest ached. Emily, do you want her? Her eyes met mine, shining with pain. No, not the way I want you. The relief that washed over me was immediate, but it was tangled with guilt. Because I realized she had been carrying this burden alone, afraid of hurting everyone around her. Then choose me, I whispered, my hand reaching for hers. I'll wait as long as it takes, but Emily, don't torture yourself like this. Don't torture me. If you love me, if you still want me, then let's stop pretending we don't. Her hand trembled in mine. I'm so scared, she whispered. Scared that you'll change your mind again. Scared that I'll open up and you'll leave me in the dark all over. I won't, I swore, my voice breaking. I was a coward before, but I'm not running anymore. I'm here. For good. Emily's tears spilled over, her shoulders shaking as she let herself lean into me. And as I held her in that quiet stairwell, I knew this was the beginning of something fragile, something breakable, but something worth fighting for. Because love isn't about being fearless. It's about choosing each other, even when fear screams the loudest. That night, as we walked out of the building together, Emily didn't let go of my hand. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was hope. And for the first time in months, hope was enough. The night felt endless, but at the same time I didn't want it to end. Sitting across from Claire on her couch, I felt the weight of months, years, maybe of unspoken feelings pressing against my chest. Her confession still echoed in my mind, gentle but unyielding, like a melody I couldn't escape. I loved you long before I had the courage to say it, Claire admitted, her voice breaking slightly, her eyes glistening with something raw and unguarded. My heart throbbed painfully. How many times had I replayed that exact possibility in my head? How many nights did I fall asleep wondering if I was the only one secretly longing? And yet, when the truth finally came, I had faltered. I couldn't meet her halfway. That cowardice sat heavy in me. Claire, I whispered, reaching for her hand now. I don't want to keep running away. Not from this. Not from you. Her gaze flickered, hopeful and terrified all at once. She didn't pull away. The next few weeks felt like walking a tightrope between reality and a dream. At work, nothing was quite the same. We moved in sync the way we always did, exchanging inside jokes, brushing past each other in the office kitchen. But now every touch, every glance lingered. We hadn't made it official yet, hadn't even kissed since that night on the couch. It was as though both of us were waiting for the other to give permission to say yes fully, unconditionally. But emotions have a way of demanding release. One Friday evening we stayed late in the office, finishing up a presentation. The building was nearly empty, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead our only companion. When Claire leaned over my shoulder to check the slides, her breath warmed my skin. My heart raced, and before I could think twice, I turned slightly close enough that her lips hovered just a breath away from mine. She froze, her eyes searching mine. "Do it," she whispered. And I did. The kiss was gentle at first, hesitant like the first notes of a song. Then it deepened, pulling years of longing into one undeniable truth. I loved her. When we broke apart, her forehead rested against mine, and she laughed shakily. God, finally. I laughed too, though tears slipped down my cheeks. I was so scared. I know, she said, brushing them away with her thumb. Me too. But not anymore. Of course, life doesn't change overnight. Coming out as a couple in the office wasn't an option, not yet. We weren't ready for the whispers, the politics, the potential risks to our careers. So we crafted a silent language of touches under the table, stolen smiles in passing, and late-night drives where we could just be ourselves. It was intoxicating and terrifying. I thought I had finally found peace in her arms, but one evening shattered that illusion. We had planned a quiet dinner at her place. When I arrived, she wasn't alone. A man stood in her kitchen, tall, dark-haired, his arm casually draped on the counter like he belonged there. "This is Michael," Claire said quickly, her tone too bright. "An old friend." Friend. The word cut me. I nodded stiffly, forcing a polite smile, but inside my chest panic roared. The way he looked at her, the familiarity in his gesture was too much. The dinner was torture. Every time he laughed at something she said, my stomach twisted. Every time she avoided meeting my eyes, my heart cracked a little more. When he finally left, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Who is he really?" I asked, my voice sharp, trembling. Claire sighed, sinking into a chair. "He's someone I used to date. Before I realized who I really was." "And you didn't think to tell me?" "I didn't want to scare you away," she whispered. "I thought if you knew how messy my past was." "Claire, I don't care about your past." I snapped, tears burning in my eyes. "I care about you lying to me." The silence stretched, heavy and unbearable. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry. I've wanted you for so long. I didn't want anything to ruin this." And just like that, the anger melted into grief. Because I understood. I too had spent years hiding, terrified of ruining something fragile. I knelt in front of her, taking her trembling hands. "No more lies, okay? If we're doing this, it has to be real. Messy, scary, honest. All of it. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. All of it. From then on, something shifted. We were still secret to the world, but no longer to each other. Every scar, every fear, every dream shared them. Nights became filled with quiet confessions, mornings with soft kisses and laughter over coffee. And yet, the weight of hiding grew heavier. It all came to a breaking point during the company retreat. A weekend in the mountains, everyone drinking, bonding, pretending to be carefree. Claire and I had promised each other no risks. Keep it professional. But then I saw her talking to a group of colleagues, her smile dazzling, her laugh like sunlight, and something in me broke. I couldn't stand on the sidelines anymore, couldn't pretend she wasn't mine. So when she slipped out onto the balcony alone, I followed. The night air was crisp, the stars scattered above us. She turned when she heard me, and I didn't wait. I kissed her hard, desperate, reckless. Her gasp against my lips was half surprise, half relief. She kissed me back like she'd been waiting for this moment her whole life. When we finally pulled apart, both breathless, I realized the sliding door was half open. Voices had gone quiet inside. They had seen us. Claire's eyes widened in panic, but I cupped her face, whispering fiercely, "Let them. I'm done hiding." For a moment she just stared at me. Then slowly she smiled a smile full of pride, of freedom. Me too. The fallout was messy, of course. Whispers. Raised eyebrows. A few pointed comments from upper management. But to my surprise, support far outweighed judgment. People were curious, yes, but not cruel. And the ones who mattered, our closest colleagues, were nothing but happy for us. It wasn't easy, but for the first time it was real. Claire and I learned to navigate the world together, hand in hand. We fought sometimes, over little things, over big things, but always circled back to each other. Because underneath it all was a love neither of us could deny anymore. One quiet Sunday morning, as sunlight spilled through the curtains, she turned to me in bed, her hair tousled, her eyes soft. "I want forever with you," she whispered. My heart swelled until it hurt. "You already have it," I said. And in that moment I knew. The fear, the heartbreak, the risks, they had all been worth it. Because love, real love, had finally found us. We weren't perfect. We never would be. But maybe that was the point. Love wasn't about perfection, it was about choosing each other. Every day, despite the imperfections, despite the fear. And as I looked into Claire's eyes, full of warmth and stubborn devotion, I knew I would choose her for the rest of my life. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.